I don't speak Portuguese very well. I speak Italian.
Right, 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 right. Talking Mr. API, I've been Mr. API for a long time. And I mean, people know me a lot by that name. Um, but today I feel that there's very, very good energy in this audience. Normally I present to very, very um, quiet audiences, either in Germany or Japan, where people are very serious, so I cannot crack any joke. But here I feel I can do that. Well, I will not start with jokes really, because every time I stopped looking at the news because it's very, very depressing. Very, very depressing. There are all of these things that are very, very worrying across the world. Um, Most worried of them all is the world without truth. Okay? We live in a world without truth. Things become true because somebody says that they are. And that's incredibly worrying. So the net result of all this is that as you can, well, you cannot see, but if you follow that link, that's an article I wrote that is titled "Uncertainty is the Only Certain Thing." Now, I made a career out of predicting the future. Predicting future trends, sometimes helping building them, and there are very, very easy things we can say about APIs. You don't need the big analyst with a big head and a big ego to tell you these things, but let's go through them very, very quickly, because then we get to really interesting things. Now, it is easy to say that APIs will be used more and more, okay? Obvious, really obvious. There are a few consequences, though. So, because anytime now you buy something, you take for granted that there are APIs into it. APIs also that might take data out of the thing, okay? Or APIs for you to push data into it, okay? Uh, it's kind of taken for granted, and it wasn't up to some time ago. Um, the The thing, though, is that those APIs are almost never right for what you want to do with the thing. But I'll get to that in a second. Um, yes, I am Mr. API, but I think we will talk about APIs less and less because everybody takes for granted they're there. You know, who talks about e-business today? Nobody. When was the last time you bought something online? That's e-business. And that's the way these trends go. Another consequence is that because there will be so many APIs, finding the one that you need to get your job done is not going to be easy. Actually, it's going to be increasingly difficult. But technology is helping with that. People will still expect to use the APIs that they need for free, even if obviously putting up the infrastructure for them is far from free. There are several models. You saw some of them this morning in some of the sessions. There is one thing that people keep asking me. I say, so when will there be API standards? I'm 63. I don't think by the time I retire, we will have good API standards. But there are several things at play here. You saw this morning there was a session on financial services. There are several API standards for financial services that come more or less from everywhere. Now we lost the slides completely. The point is that when there are 7 or 8 standards, like there are for financial services, there is no standard, okay, because there's too many. So there is no one that people can use and trust to do things on them. And it's not only financial services, it's healthcare, for example, although in healthcare is slightly better. ETOM for telcos, that was in Clever's slide this morning. But, you know, we will have to wait for them, okay? We will have to wait for them, and system integrators will keep making money on mapping the standards one with the other. Now, so those were very, very easy things to say. Okay, you don't need me to come here from 10,000 miles away to tell you those things. You can probably figure those out yourselves. Now, for this presentation, I really wanted to insist on 5 things. 5 things that people are kind of seeing, but not very clearly, okay? You will see the first few things will be things that we've been talking about for some time, but we didn't feel the power of them as yet. And as you go, we will talk about things that maybe you see coming, but will play a major role, okay, in the future. Now, in doing those 5 trends, I ask myself, which APIs will be called a lot in 3 years from now, okay? And those are the ones that I selected. Now, I built, as I said, I built a career in predicting these things, making sure that they were happening, and I mostly got it right. So I'm reasonably confident that all of the things that I'm saying will sound familiar to you. But then, I'm confident that in a year, 2 years from now, you might look at these slides again and say, there you are. He said that, okay? And either, well, I hope he was right, or, well, he didn't get this at all, okay? But I wouldn't be here if I got many things ready. So if I got many things wrong, okay? So let's go through them. The first one is something that you really have seen a lot of, but not enough. Composability is not new. How long have we been talking about composability? I wrote my first computer program when I was 16, okay? And that dates me, really. There was only assembler at that stage, and computers were as big as this room. But there was this thing called subroutine, which you used to call a lot when you needed the same job done. That was the beginning of the notion of composability. We've been talking about it a lot. It hasn't been happening a lot, What I really want here is to have composable businesses, business items that you can compose, okay? When my kids were small, they used to look at all of these Marvel movies. Do you remember? You know, the Avengers. You know, and there was one character in these movies, Tony Stark is his name, who was one of the main heroes. And he was living in this tower, and he had a big, kind of a big artificial intelligence help, okay? And if you remember, there were scenes in which he was trying to do something, and I would take one thing from here, one thing from there, compose it on a kind of a virtual screen in front of him. And we all thought it was science fiction, and it was. But if you look at today at most platforms of low code, they allow you to compose new transactions just by taking little bits here and there. So why is this not taking over? First of all, because to compose things, you have to have things to compose first, okay? Not only, those things have to be of the right size, the right shape, okay? And for some reason, as an industry, we cannot come up with things of the right size, of the right shape. Is the old problem of service granularity, which I used to write on when I was writing on SOA about 15, 20 years ago. Composability is very clear to architects. They know exactly the value of it, and they want absolutely to proceed that way. How many architects here in the room? Do your bosses listen to you? That is the curse of the architects, that they say the right things that you should do, but then people don't listen to them, okay? And that is a problem. It is a genuine problem. You have some statistics at the side of this slide, on the left of this slide, of my ex-colleagues in Gartner. You can see what happened in 4 years. That organization in the last 4 years have been using external APIs much more. You see, 52% of them 4 years ago used them, and now it's up to 94%. Also, 4 years ago, very few people, not even half of the respondents to the survey used to offer public APIs, and now we're up to 80%. Also, we have this thing, you know, when I go into companies and I talk to engineers, they want to design. You know, they want to make new stuff. Okay. They don't want to reuse something that is there already. That was done, you know, it was done by those people. I don't like them. And then, you know, they don't code well, they're not scalable, you know, and it's an old technology. And so I don't like them. And so this problem of getting people to reuse the composable thing is still a big problem, okay? And also companies have not been very good in pushing the composability once they have stuff to compose with. Okay, so that's composability. It will keep going, okay? Because it's a good thing and it's still in the minds of a lot of people, and it will keep going. Now, another thing, known technologists. Now, you know, all of these people outside of IT department, outside of technology, that actually are able to do something with technology. People who kind of, you know, record macros, you know, they are whiz kids with Excel spreadsheets. They can record an interaction with some RPA. those are business technologists. So these are people who are not IT people, and they're not technologists. They're not trained in IT, but can do useful things with technologies. Now, Forrester believes that in the world, there are 22 million of real developers, people who code, okay? Well, probably there's more. I don't know. And I don't know when you can talk about this with David, but um, actually, David G, right? David G, not David. Um, we can talk about this, but to me, there's just like 3 million of developers just here in Brazil. Anyway, let's suppose there are 22 million of developers. 1 billion are knowledge workers. Gartner says 1 out of 6 is a business technology, which means that there are around, well, how much? 160, 170 million business technologists. So it's about 9 or 10 times the number of developers. These people do useful things if only we could govern them. And it's written here somewhere. If only we could get them to know things properly without, going around our infrastructure and making a mess of our corporate data before they say, oh yeah, well, I thought that was the right thing to do. Okay. Now, if we could leverage them, and this is a big thing and it's coming up, if you want the success and the growth of low-code platforms is a sign of all this happening, okay? And they are generally, this business technology, they're generally grouped in so-called fusion teams, which are teams that are tasked with a specific thing to do. It could be, I don't know, a process for, I don't know, signing up a microloan, okay, all automatically, all online. So there you go, the G word again. They need to be governed, okay? When I was, and I think Clever remembers this, when I was writing on SOA governance, I used to, in front of audiences like this, I used to say, look, there is Paolo's paradox of governance. And the Paolo's paradox of governance is very simple. We had, in those times, we had service-oriented architectures. But even now, when I ask an audience like this, how many of you think that their API work or their service works needs to be governed? I get lots of hands up, okay? And then I ask, how many of the people who raise their hands would accept to be governed? Very, very few. And that is the paradox. Because we all think we need governance, but then when our own decision rights are taken away, we don't like that, okay? Even if it's for the common good. So if it is difficult to govern developers, you can imagine how difficult it is to govern business technologists, Good luck, in doing that. But, it's something that needs to happen. We talked a lot about OpenX. We had sessions, very good sessions this morning on open banking. Here in Brazil, the government mandates have got open banking to work, not like other countries. Banking as a service is coming up as a trend very, very strongly. Now, if you think about it, open is the son of the API economy. The API economy, when I started writing about it, I can't take ownership. I didn't call it API economy, okay? That was Forbes who did that. But when I started writing about the API economy, I could see all of these things coming. I could see that there would be a future in which companies, not technology companies, any company would do a platform to build an ecosystem of users on. And that is true today in insurance. That's open insurance for you. So the OpenX will keep evolving, okay? People will always strive for this openness and for the governance associated with it. Sustainability, there is a Portuguese word which was mentioned before, but I don't remember exactly how to say, so I will not make a fool out of myself. Two main problems, okay? Two main problems. Companies need to know today how many greenhouse gas emissions they are producing. Very, very difficult, especially for manufacturing. You have to be looking at upstream operations and downstream. If you do cars, you're actually responsible also for the emissions of when these cars are on the road. Okay. There is an international agreement, the Paris Agreement, was done in 2015. So when Clever was talking about open banking, 196 countries, Brazil is one of them, they will dictate sustainability thresholds for companies year by year. And those thresholds will go lower and lower. The companies will struggle to meet them. So they will need a very precise way of calculating emissions very quickly. APIs are absolutely ideal for that, and they will be called all the time, okay? So sustainability APIs will be a big business. Also, the second problem with sustainability is that as these targets go lower and lower, each company will struggle to meet them and fail, okay? So what do? They buy sustainability credits, okay? And even the sale of sustainability credits will be done through APIs because people will need to do that all the time, okay? And this sustainability APIs are massively data intensive. Think about calculating the green gas emissions of a mine, for example, of coal, or but the trouble with sustainability is that this calculation can change very, very quickly. If you move a data center from, say, I don't know, from Brazil to the US, your sustainability credits, your sustainability impact will go straight up. If you give your employees 2 screens for their computers instead of 1, that pushes up your greenhouse gas emissions. So this is going to be a big problem, and APIs are going to help. But the thing I really want to talk about is AI. There was a fascinating session this morning. Scott probably is in the audience now, on AI being ethical. Now, I've been an analyst, 25 years, so I'm skeptical, okay? Not only I'm skeptical, I'm suspicious. So if when I call an API that is, say, tagged as being an AI API, that is, for example, suggesting me to do something, I say, why? Says who? is it really the best thing for me to do? This is compounded by the fact that, contrary to what you heard this morning from Scott, his stuff is ethical. But the majority of AI content will not be ethical. It will be done by companies that have a commercial interest in skewing the results of the APIs. Okay? And this is just not me being cynical. That's the way the world goes. So, because in the next few years, there won't be very little of the so-called replacement, which is a bit of like a Terminator scenario, in which machines will take place of humans and kill them all, you know. But the most likely scenario for the next few years is that a lot of us will use AI to basically do our jobs better, okay? Now, in that scenario, you have to trust this AI. This AI will be packaged in neat APIs that you will call. So you will need to trust those APIs to give you honest results. It is a huge, huge problem. Not just because there's people like me who will not trust the APIs, but what if you get suboptimal results? You make business decisions. The problem is that there is a lot of what I call AI washing. So a lot of things that today are described as AI are not AI at all. This might be sophisticated algorithms, okay, but they are deterministic. So given the same inputs, we'll always produce the same results. In my book, to be AI, he has to do two things, okay? First of all, he has to learn. So if there is a learning process, I mean, there will be data fed to this AI thing that will make the AI take different decisions in time depending on what happened before. So if it doesn't learn, it's not AI. Might be very useful, okay? But you cannot call it AI. Second thing. It has to take autonomous decisions, because that's the core of intelligence. You have to let this AI constructs to decide something that will be relevant to your business. So to me, if it doesn't do these two things, it's not AI. Okay? It's not AI. So how can you protect yourself? Well, if you design AI API, be ethical, okay? Ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I not like giving a delusion to the people who will use the API that are doing the right thing and then they are not? You can always say no. You can. If it's doing something that you shouldn't think is right, you can step out and say, I'm not doing this. Okay? So, on the contrary, if you're using AI content, ask yourself, is this real? Is it real AI? Who paid for the development for this API? What data was used to train it? Because in most cases, people will buy APIs that are trained already. Can I train it more? There are lots of stories about, AI so-called algorithms that have been done with a skewed set of inputs. Okay, there was this alleged AI engine that was suggesting shoes for ladies. Okay, you bought these shoes. Now, how about these other shoes? The problem is that the data that was fed to this API, there was a set of programmers that did that in India, and they were all male. So the shoes that came out were actually shoes for men. Okay, so there's a lot of these things happening. So ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself, what is the consequence of this thing giving me the wrong results? Okay, let me finish. Simple things. We just got started with this thing of open platform, open banking, open insurance. This will go on for years, okay? Take into account that a lot of technology will be realized by people who are not technologists by training, and this will happen more and more. Keep the faith on composability, okay? And also, ask yourself those 4 questions about AI whenever you touch any AI content, okay? That's what I wanted to talk about, and I hope, well, nobody of you walked away. I hope those of the 3,000 people at home, nobody went to prepare their dinner. But thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you have a good rest of the show. Thank you very much.
Hello.